Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today is July 19th, 2023. We are here in the Larimer County Administrative Services Building in the Commissioners' Conference Room for a work session for discussion regarding the American Rescue Plan Act. I am Larimer County Commissioner Jody Scheib-McNally, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. I welcome you and thank you for joining us. Joining me today is my colleague, Commissioner John Kafalis and Commissioner Kristen Stevens. Also joining us today is County Manager Lorenda Volker and our, Josh Fudge, who is our, PBS, I'm trying to think, budget and strategy, and the other one was I was trying to remember. Performance, Budget and Strategy Office. Sorry, I was like trying to remember that and I couldn't remember the P, but it's a new title and expanded duties for Josh. But he has been kind of, we have our ARPA lady at the table, and we also have our ARPA guy. So these folks have been doing really great work for us and with the American Rescue Plan dollars and the Act, and helping us navigate as we use these dollars efficiently to be transformative and help with the needs in our community. So Josh, thanks for being here today. I didn't introduce others, but I think you'll introduce them as we go along, and appreciate your work, and I'll let you proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. So we do have quite a few items on the agenda today, including an update on the Red Feather Lakes public restroom project, for which we will be seeking direction, an update on those transformational projects, an update on the projects in natural resources, and an update on immediate needs grants, and then finally the usual information about our financial update for the state and local fiscal recovery funds. So with that, I will turn it over to Mark Peterson, our county engineer, to provide an update on the Red Feather Lakes public restroom project.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mark Peterson, Engineering Director. So as Josh indicated, we'll just give you a brief update on where we are with the funding that the project that you had authorized to pursue a public restroom facility up in the Red Feather Lakes community. So there were petitions that were circulated for two potential ballot measures. One was related to road maintenance, the other related to operations and maintenance of a public restroom facility. And they came up short of the required number of signatures to move those forward on to a ballot or to a hearing with you all to decide whether to put it on to a ballot. This November, they did come back to us, and at the PAC meeting that was held up in Red Feather, they did want to continue to pursue it. They really want that facility, that facility in the community, so they are currently circulating another petition to try to get this item on the ballot in 2024. What we're here to talk to you about is whether or not we should spend some of the funding that you've allocated for this to do some of the preliminary work that would be needed to really move forward with any type of facility up there. Part of it would be to examine whether or not the facility could support running water, flush toilets, whether we could have a leach field. So there's some geotechnical analysis that could be done, as well as preliminary engineering on sort of siting, as well as developing a site plan. Obviously, if they don't have a way to move forward with the PID for operations and maintenance, that money is expended and maybe not then utilized to build a facility. But there are a variety of things that could be done sort of here at the front end to support this moving forward, and they wouldn't be entirely throwaway. It just might not be that the county would be helping build a facility. I don't have an exact cost. It's probably somewhere in the range of $25,000 to $50,000 that would be spent on doing some of these preliminary studies and refining or better defining what they could pursue up there.
And
so that's,
Josh, we allocated $500,000, I think, to this total project. So your proposal is to take roughly 50 or so.
Up to 10%.
out of the project funds to do the design work and evaluate
To
what's
do
possible.
some of the preliminary work that would need to be done for any facility of this kind. And it would have to go through some sort of site plan process, potentially a location and extent process as well.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Do we have any sense of whether the second petition circulation will be, have they made the case? I mean, they're expecting a different outcome, so I just wonder if you have any sense of what you think might be different this time around, if they might be able to get those signatures, because I don't mind expending some of those dollars, but it would sort of be in hopes that maybe they had done an education piece of why this is valuable and why this would increase business or.
Right, and part of their challenge was they were very time constrained this last time around. Many of the people the property owners who they need to gather signatures from on the petition are only up there seasonally, and they're not there until the spring. And so they really only had the Memorial Day weekend was the only holiday weekend that they had to collect signatures from people coming into the area who aren't year-round residents. And so the thinking is now they've got almost a whole year to go through this petition process and get the required number of signatures. They ended up with a little over 140, and they needed 200 at a minimum. So they really only had a couple months to circulate a petition.
Commissioner Kofalis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mark and Josh. I think Mark, our county engineer, did a excellent job of summarizing the situation, so I appreciate that. I think only a couple of things that I would add. There were a number of factors that contributed to the challenges in terms of securing the proper number of signatures. You know, certainly time constraints were a big one. But I do know that another thing besides more time up until next summer to secure the 200 plus signatures, there also will be additional circulators. Maybe you could speak to that. I think that was a discussion we had at the last Red Feather Lakes PAC meeting, but you're suggesting that that may not be the case. I think there are some limits, and that was an issue of identifying folks who are properly trained and everything else. So that was a factor. And the only other thing I'll add is that when they were circulating two petitions for two potential public improvement districts, it seemed like, anecdotally at least, people were much more receptive to the public restroom facilities than the road maintenance, even though the road maintenance is really needed as well.
Yeah, they only got a little over 90 some signatures on the road maintenance part of it.
Won't there be more circulators?
Well, actually, we had hoped there could be. We went back and consulted with the county attorney's office, and statutorily, you're only allowed to have 3. So that's what we've put out there. So we provided revised petitions to them prior to the 4th of July weekend so they could start recirculating and trying to collect signatures on a petition to come before you in 2024.
So if I may, perhaps it's not a surprise, but my recommendation in terms of direction sought would be to maintain the allocation of $500,000. I don't think we have time limits on how or when to use this, and also to consider up to 10% of that money to go for the design of the facility. I really think folks want it. I think they can pull off the signatures this go around, and I think it would go a long way to improving the basic infrastructure of that village, of that community, in their efforts to do perhaps more diverse economic development. And certainly during the summertime, it gets impacted a great deal by the influx of tourists, and there's not really a lot of places for them to go to the bathroom.
If I could make one other point that I just thought of, and that was the other thing that came up at the last PAC meeting, or the prior version of the petition that was circulated, didn't include the Fox Acres community in it. And at the last PAC meeting, representatives from Fox Acres were even there and said, we wanted to be part of this effort. So they've been added in to the community, and that then affects the mill levy rate. There's more assessed valuation in the district, potentially more people who can sign it. And so what's being circulated now is a one mill property tax.
Certainly, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just one more point, and perhaps you can help me with this, Mark. Isn't it correct that should we be able to go forward with design, I mean, the intent is to build a facility. If all goes well, they get the signatures and they can figure out the maintenance of it, that it would be configured in such a way that in the long term, if we're ever able to do a more comprehensive wastewater system, it could tap into that. Am I correct on that, Mark? Or?
Yeah, I mean, that would be the goal, is to have a system that could tie into a centralized wastewater treatment facility.
Thank you.
If that were to occur at some point in the future.
I thought that was an important point to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I agree. That's an important point to make. I think overall, this community certainly needs, this facility, and maybe hindsight, had some challenges and barriers to having a successful first petition, but it sounds already that they have potentially engaged community members who are really ready to invest in this. So I support your recommendation, and I think it's a good investment for that community, even if we just can get started, so that hopefully when they do hopefully they have a successful second petition, then maybe we'll be ready to roll with them. So anyone else have any, I'm assuming, I'm taking it as if we're all in consensus and aligned with that direction. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mark. Next up is an update on our transformational projects, and for that, I will turn it over to our Human and Economic Health Director, Laura Walker.
Nice job on the title, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, Laura Walker, Human and Economic Health Director for the county. So in looking at my slides right this minute, I realized it probably would have been more efficient to reorder these, because all of the projects that have anything to do with homeless mitigation or affordability of housing, I've handed over to Aaliyah Rodriguez from my office to provide the updates, because she's the one shepherding through resolutions and grant agreements for those housing and homeless mitigation related issues. So we're going to just kind of tag team and go back and forth, but it probably would have been better if I listed all of mine first or all of hers first, so that we could just speak at one time. But so that folks can follow along, we'll just do this back and forth. So behavioral health phase 2, as folks know, that is the intended second facility at our Longview campus for behavioral health services. And that would have been it is going to be, I shouldn't say it that way. It is going to be our adolescent care facility. And the monies that the commissioners have set aside, I'm hoping will be able to remain there, even though we were unsuccessful in seeking grant funds from the state of Colorado from their ARPA allocations that were dedicated towards behavioral health projects. So I think we're just in a phase of waiting a little bit longer. I think we're in the same place that we were prior to the state level grant opportunity becoming available. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So we are continuing down that path, and I will be periodically bringing the project team together that worked on the grant application. Those are the subject matter experts and people from the community that would be involved in the development of a project like this, and we're going to keep meeting and keep planning and assume that we're just having a little later start. The second one there, the Loveland Child Care Campus. So Boys and Girls Club did have a successful closing to purchase the other really half of the property that they've been occupying, just very near to our Loveland campus down at 200 Peridot. So they're right across the street and a little bit east down that road. And so they have not started refurbishment as far as I know, but our contribution was solely for the purchase of the building. So I'll be getting status updates regularly just as a part of the community, but our dedicated funds have been well spent there. I'll turn it over to Aaliyah because we have a couple of housing-related items, and then I'll be back.
Thanks, Aaliyah. Thanks, Laura.
Hello, I'm Aaliyah Rodriguez, the Housing Stability Program Manager. The first project here is the fish hatchery workforce housing in Estes Park. In light of current economic circumstances, specifically the rise in interest rates and construction costs, you're going to hear this throughout as I go through these housing updates. But the developer that Town of Estes was working on for this project, they weren't able to make the units an affordable rent level that the town deemed necessary to move forward with the project. It doesn't mean the project isn't happening, they're just shifting. So right now, they're just evaluating creative ways to move forward with the project, and they're aware of the timelines with these funds, and they're planning to reach back out to me by the end of this summer to discuss next steps on finding a path forward to still make the fish hatchery workforce housing happen.
Any questions, colleagues? Commissioner Kafalis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks. Thank you, Aaliyah. Would you remind us, please, were there, in our discussions around this project, were there specific provisions around the range of the area median income that would be addressed in order for us to deploy these funds? I know it's meant to be workforce housing, but and it sounds like the developer thinks they might not be able to be within that AMI range, area median income. Could you speak to that, please?
Yes. So it's actually the town that is setting that standard for this project to move forward, which is why they're going to pivot and find a developer that they can help get it within that range. So the envision of the fish hatchery project is 190 units that will serve an AMI cap of 120%. Since they are a tourist town, mountain town, having those AMI caps a little bit higher is more realistic to serve their workforce.
So that would, of course, be helpful to school teachers, first responders, and those kinds of folks. Would any of the housing be available for folks who clean the sheets and cook the tacos, perhaps in the restaurants?
I believe so. So 120 is going to be the highest range. So they'll have rentals available for those lower AMIs as well. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on fish hatchery?
You just remind me of the deadline and the timeline. So when they have to be able to expend this, is that in our IGA or our agreement with them? I mean, when they had to start, is that the 2024 they had to start, or what was that timeline?
Yeah, so we don't have a contract with them yet, but what's been communicated is that it needs to be allocated by 2024 and spent by 2025.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next project is the medical clinic for people experiencing homelessness. And this contract was executed in January, so it is happening. It's already been obligated. Homeward Alliance is currently working through contract negotiations for their medical provider. And they've just recently received updated renderings for construction, and they're hoping to start that soon. And they're still on track to have that clinic opened by the end of the year.
Thank you. That's exciting.
So I'll pop in here and talk a little bit about the K-12 Workforce Development Project. So just like we had our disappointment with behavioral health phase 2 not receiving additional funding from the state level, Thompson and Poudre school districts got the same disappointment in their bid for some of those funds through the workforce lane of those ARPA funds. So it was a different state office that was offering those opportunities, but they too were denied any funding, which was disappointing. But what I've asked the two school districts to do, and they are working on right now, is a revised proposal to still be able to utilize the dollars that the commissioners intend for this purpose to enhance the workforce development programming that each of the school districts already has. But the project is going to be scaled much farther back from the notion of being able to build another building out near the I-25 and Prospect intersection where Poudre School District already owns land. But they do have ways to tangibly improve and increase access to the K-12, to the workforce development programs that already exist. And so that should be back in my hands by mid-August. And so given that we only have these updates once a quarter, I'll probably have to find another avenue to make sure that the commissioners are informed of what that new proposal looks like and answer any questions that you might have before we get to that next quarterly session.
So Laura and I have talked about potentially a very short work session to go through the revised proposals and see if that's something that you want to replace this with and what questions you might have about that rather than waiting the next 3 months in case they come up with something sooner.
Yep. Any questions about that? Otherwise, I'll hand it back to Aaliyah for some more housing and homeless mitigation projects.
I just had a quick question. Is it still, I'm assuming, it's still a joint collaborative project, or is it?
So each school district will still be running their own operations, but what I'm hoping to see in a proposal and what we've sort of talked about is enhancing what's offered, allowing more students in each school district to have access, but also find ways to partner and figure out transportation potentially so that if, say, there's a specialty area at the Futures Lab, I believe is the name. I hope I'm saying that right. At Poudre High School, which has specialties that are different than what Thompson School District offers. I'm hoping to see some cross-pollination of access for students to get to what they really want to be studying.
And they were still looking to somehow engage or offer some of these to the Estes Park School District as well?
I'm not clear about that, but again, I'm hoping to see as much regional and cross-pollination as possible in their new proposal.
Thank you.
Okay, the next project on here is the 24/7 homeless shelter. They are still awaiting news from the state regarding the transformational homeless dollars. The next round of those dollars are supposed to be announced at the end of July, or awarded at the end of July and then announced early August. They've been in constant communication with DOLA around those dollars, answering questions and clarifying. So they're just waiting to hear back on those. They plan to submit their planning and zoning with the city in September. If they do not get fully funded from the state dollars, then that will kick a capital campaign to raise the funds after that. So once a broader plan is made for the remainder of the funds, then we can move forward with finalizing our contract for that one.
Commissioner Gonzalez, thank you.
Yes. What are the, in light of your statement earlier regarding inflationary costs with regard to everything related to construction, what are the updated estimates of what this facility will cost? And are they hoping to get all of the funds from the state and perhaps our small contribution of $1.5 million? Is that how they're planning to pay for it?
I can certainly reach out and get you the updated estimate. I don't have that on hand, but I can follow up.
Do you know, Leah, what the original estimate was? What they thought originally when this project was proposed, how much it would cost?
I don't, but I do know that they asked the state for $10 million.
Oh, for $10 million.
And that would not be the full cost.
I can't
The
imagine.
10 million plus our 1.5 would not have been sufficient. I believe that they always had intention to have some kind of a campaign to raise funds outside of, these governmental spaces. And I also know that, Bohemian Foundation owns the piece of land that they intend to build on. But there also could be financial support. I'm not sure what that looks like. And I certainly am not making any commitments on behalf of Bohemian Foundation, but.
Okay, the next project is the youth shelter. They received over $4 million of those transformational dollars, which was a wonderful win for our area. Their groundbreaking is anticipated to be in the late fall, early winter, and their contract is on track to be brought to the board in September. So you should see that coming to admin matters in September.
And I talked to some of those key partners today, and there's certainly they commented how we brought everyone together last May, and then under a year, this is going forward, and they just really were just thankful for all the partners. I mean, Thompson School District, Pruder, the county, everyone, and Matthew's House is just a phenomenal thing to think about, everyone coming together and seeing something done. It's pretty cool, so it's something to celebrate.
Definitely.
For sure. Okay, moving on to the last line item on this slide, the Kids Pack facility. Although they have faced some of the same, quandaries about how to pay for increased construction material costs and other kinds of delays, they actually have made excellent progress. So just to let folks know the location, I wasn't really clear about this until I asked Tom Kerrigan for an update, but it's at 250 69th Court, so very near to the UPS distribution center off of 287 in North Loveland. So that's helpful to kind of get a sense about how people are going to access this and where it's going to go. But they have completed electric, sewer, and several other necessary things on the property. They have not broken ground yet, but they're very close, and they do have to be out of their current location by April of 2024. So that's their deadline to make absolutely sure that they've got this thing finished by then. So there will be opportunities to go and visit as they get some bricks and mortar stuff going on the campus. And of course, Tom is thrilled with the contribution and would like to have the commissioners come out and visit as soon as there's something to see.
I'm still on my commissioner goals is we're going to do a pack as commissioners are in office. Maybe we'll have a little friendly competition who can pack fastest. So
That would be good.
thank
I
you.
did speak to their executive director yesterday just for an update on the project, and they are roughly 50% through their capital campaign, so they're making good progress. And I have a floor plan, and they have offered naming to you all because we are so far the cornerstone donor. And they've suggested a portico where all of the volunteers will come through, both the packers as well as the deliverers of the backpacks. And so they're imagining a brass plaque that says, "This area funded by Larimer County." So I will let them know that is a nice thing to do and a good outcome. It'd be nice to have our name as part of that project. There'll be other naming areas as well, so we won't be the only ones, but we will be the only one outside the building.
Great, thank you.
Okay, the Hartside Hill project. Care Housing is working on finalizing their budgets and their development plan. And they'll be using part of the county funds towards the affordable housing side of this project, but majority will be going towards the newly envisioned community center. We should be ready to bring this contract to you all in early August. We were just waiting for that finalized development plan. So once we have that, we'll be able to bring that contract to you. And then their groundbreaking ceremony is going to be on October 5th, and I'll be sure to forward those details to you all when I have them.
Okay, Poudre Park Community Center. So this project has hit a number of stalls with regard to permitting for them to do the refurbishment on the building that is necessary, and that's what we are the primary funder for this project. So I had reached out to Marcy from the Lower Poudre Canyon Association, and she was sharing with me some of the struggles that they've had with bringing things into compliance and having enough technical expertise on the project, and whether or not that was going to raise their costs. So I have offered to convene a meeting with Rebecca from our community development department, myself, and probably Caitlin, just to walk through the things that are problematic for them and see if there are any alternatives. Because frankly, if they can't get past these barriers without doubling the cost of the project, which is what they were worried about, they may have to return the funds to us and come up with a different plan to probably raise that building and build something brand new, which is a whole different endeavor that wouldn't be able to get completed in the timeframes necessary for the ARPA funds. So we will be having that meeting and hopefully be able to find some middle ground to help them move forward, but I'll keep the board posted.
Thank you. Laura, or someone can remind us of, I thought we had, when we updated the building permit requirements, or some of the permitting requirements, we put in some provisions that provided for either some discounts or some kind of reduction in fees for community benefits or for housing in particular. Wouldn't that apply here, or maybe that's not enough?
I don't think it's the cost of the permits or the fees associated with that. It's that they may have to go back out and get a whole new development plan and get a different type of architectural consulting on the project, that they felt like they had already completed that and it looks like it's insufficient. The work is insufficient because of the level of firm or individual that they used to begin with. That's my very limited understanding, since I'm not in the community development space at all. So
It's good that you're going to convene a meeting with our community development folks and see how we can work through this as best as we can.
great. And then the Wellington Community Life Center, they have gotten another major donor commitment that is speeding them towards hopefully breaking ground. They have not broken ground yet, but they do have, all of their plans are complete and they have all their permits that are necessary. So it's just a matter of getting the construction actually begun. So I'm confident that they'll be able to meet the timeframes to build that center. So once again, I'll have Aaliyah take a couple of these.
Okay, the next project is Pooter Commons. So they're still in early stages. They plan to put out an RFP for to find a master developer in fall of this year. And once they have that, they'll be able to finalize their budget pieces so that we can figure out how our contract fits into that. And they have the last time I checked in with them, they said that they're still on track to begin construction at the end of 2024. So that's my update for them. For the land bank opportunity, yeah, I've been working through kind of the complexities of this piece of land. It is still available. What makes it complex is it has structures on it currently where there are tenants living there. So I've been working with the attorney's office. I've been working with risk management and just trying to figure out if this is a good fit for the county land bank, considering the liability around residents living on the land. So I'm continuing to work through that. I even had Cascadia, our contracted third party, who is working with our land use code, do some research about county land banks in the state for me as well. I just received that memo yesterday, so I haven't had time to review it. But so it's still in the research stages for this piece.
Why don't you go ahead and update on Kector too, and then I'll end off with two other things.
Sure. Kector's quick. That contract was executed yesterday, and they're on track to finish their construction in September. And as Stefka stated yesterday, we'll share that update with you as soon as I have a date, so you could attend that ceremony.
Okay, so Medford Family Recovery, this is the coordinated efforts of our Larimer County Interagency Oversight Group, along with our Human Services Department here at the county, to develop a better continuum of care for child welfare involved families or families that are at risk of involvement with child welfare, who have both housing and substance use disorder treatment needs. And so they had acquired help from some consultants, the ABT consultants, who've done this kind of work in other states. They do have the roadmap back from ABT of what's going to be required and what the stages are in building this continuum. And at this point, they intend to start the project with satellite housing opportunities rather than, the end of the spectrum. That would be the grandest thing, would be to have one facility where families who are in these situations with children under the age of 5 can come and live at that facility for a certain period of time to receive treatment, have their child with them, child or children, and appropriate daycare, childcare resources while they're working through their treatment program. And so As I said, LCIOG, they are working diligently towards getting this continuum started. Housing Catalyst has come forward and agreed to seek more family vouchers for affordable housing, and that they would be set aside for this exact purpose, where the family has either already been involved, and there's a risk of them becoming re-involved with child welfare, or they're currently involved, so that we can have those satellite locations and bring the services to those families, but again, not have to separate parents and kids. So that is moving along, and I'm confident that there will be opportunity to commit and spend those funds towards this project well within the timeframes. And then the last thing, I know it's not on the slide, but you will be getting contact at your office about the ribbon cutting for the Livermore Community Hall, because it's finished. Yay. So the ribbon cutting event will be on Saturday, August 19th. I don't know the time yet. Probably something like 10 or 11 in the morning is when they would schedule it, but we're having those details going through your support staff here to see if we can get it on your calendars for August 19th.
It is on our calendars for the 19th, but it's from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., so I'm hoping that it will be.
Let me get clarification of the best time for
Yeah.
commissioners to arrive.
Yeah, because.
I didn't realize you'd already gotten an appointment.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I've had questions about that. It would, I have a family, my niece's 20th wedding anniversary that I'd like to make sure I show up on time for, so.
I
don't
had that
want-
yesterday.
Oh, happy anniversary. But it's kind of weird that my niece has been married for 20 years. It
No.
makes me feel really old, so.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'd like to just make sure I'm on time for that, too.
I
so.
will follow up.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
All right, thank you, Laura and Aaliyah. The next item on the agenda is an overview of the ARPA-funded projects in our Department of Natural Resources. As you might remember, a while ago, about $2 million was allocated to natural resources for 5 projects. And so with us today is Jonathan Plybon, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, from Natural Resources to provide an update on these projects.
Hello, Commissioners. Good afternoon. My name is John Plybon. I manage capital improvement plan, capital resources, and capital projects for natural resources. Get that on, I was a little tired. And these are the 5 projects we see here that Natural Resources has going on for the American Rescue Plan Act funded projects, and these are all water infrastructure related projects. You can see we have a couple wastewater projects, one at Hermit Park, 400K, one at Carter Reservoir for 660K. We've also improving a well water system up at Hermit Park. We are doing a improvement to the day use and swim beach area on the east side of Carter Reservoir as well. And then we're doing a restroom upgrade at Horsetooth. In total, we're about $2 million in capital projects. Go ahead. So for this year, we've got 2 wastewater projects that we're working on, and both are already under contract. In reality, all 5 projects are already underway, and we're already getting started on them. They're at some point in the project life cycle, but for 2023, we have these 2 wastewater projects, one at Hermit and one at Carter, and they're both under contract. We're working with a contractor already, designing them, getting assessments and surveys in place, and working on design. We anticipate the Carter project will be construction completed this year, and will likely complete Hermit Park in the spring of '24. A couple other water infrastructure related projects set for 2024. We're already in the process of developing an RFP for the Hermit Park well water system upgrade. And we planned for construction during 2024 as well here. The Horsetooth Reservoir restroom upgrade, we are combining that project with another project we have going on with an aquatic nuisance species decontamination station at South Bay. And we're going to improve the restroom there as well. So that will be another 2024 project. And we're already working with our engineering department and our consultants on both of those projects this year. Lastly, this is a really fun project. We're improving the day use and swim beach area on the east side of Carter Lake, and really fun project. we're already underway. We've got a consultant under contract already. We're working on design. And this project has to coordinate with another project, our big flap project, so that we've got parking lots associated with these new day use areas and whatnot. So that's gotta, even though we're designing it right now, we've got to put it on the back burner to coincide with that other project. So we plan to install this and to complete construction in 2025. And that will be all 5 of our projects that DNR has ARPA-related funds for. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a quick question, since I don't see any hands up. I'm familiar with the increased use during, especially during the pandemic and the shutdown of that swim beach, and a lot of them were families, and especially Hispanic families in that area, and it was a safety issue of them crossing the road, and I know you're really well aware of this. Did we seek out, and maybe this is a question for Dalen and Megan, did we seek out some of those families or interview them, what they'd like to see or what they need, or have we, when they're there, gone down and got some feedback for what they like to have, so that, whether it's a certain kind of picnic table or a way for them to barbecue? I didn't know if we had any user feedback for what that day use area would look like.
Commissioner, I know we have done a number of different outreach associated with this, and I know that we're still planning on doing some additional outreach. In fact, once we get a rendering from our consultant, we're going to go back with the neighborhood around there to get their input. But specifically, the increase in underserved populations, I don't know that we have any additional resources from surveys available.
Thank you for that. I just thought, well, maybe we just walk through when they're there, just kind of ask them, what would you like to see? How does this look? What's a barrier? And I'm just curious about that, because that's kind of what we're trying to design it for, is those families that are there. So I think you guys are doing great work, and I know it's a need that you guys identified a long time ago. It's a safety issue as well, and I know the neighbors have been concerned with that increased parking on the other side. So this is really a win-win for the neighbors and for our users. We want to have a really good user experience, and I also think it's a win for staff, because you guys have less trying to do enforcement or trying to make sure people are safe. So I want to thank you. I'm really excited to see all this, have this update, and I know these projects were on the list and they're critically needed. So I want to thank you for your work and being here today. Colleagues, did you have any other questions? I'd be very curious to look at that, and I live close to there, so it's just nice I'm excited for this, because I think this is a really important use for some of especially for our belonging, inclusion, and EDI work that we want to have. So
yes, we're all very excited as well, especially with the DEI sort of things, including more of our community into this, engaging these sorts of services. So thank you very much.
Yeah, great work. Thank you.
Up next is an update on our immediate needs grants, which are winding down. Some of this data is a little bit older because it was done before a long vacation, so I apologize for that. But about $2.81 million of the just over $3 million has been dispersed for these projects. So only about $234,000 is remaining. And of that amount, actually more than half is related to a project we'll be discussing in a moment. 48 of the 52 projects have already been fully reimbursed or expired. One project expired at the end of June, and so they have until the end of this month to request their reimbursement and get that finalized. And then the remaining 3 projects expire at the end of this year. There were about $30,000 of funding that was awarded that was not claimed by the grantees, and so that sort of falls now to the bottom line, if you will, of the SLFRF funding. However, there was one grantee I just spoke with early this week that indicated they had submitted some reimbursement requests that we haven't fulfilled, so I will follow up with them and make sure they get their funding related to that. So the one other item for which we're seeking direction today is there's a project, the Fort Collins Mobile Home Water Project in partnership with the city, and we have 2 staff who implemented that project, Emily Olivo and J.C. Ward from the city of Fort Collins, and you can feel free to join me now. The contribution from the county for that was $132,500 roughly. They've completed the project, I believe, and because of weather and other things that they're more capable of describing, the project went over slightly. Initially, when this was put together, the cost overrun was about $18,500. However, I understand it's now down to about $15,500. And so I will just turn it over to Emily and JC to describe the project and the need for additional funds.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Commissioners and County Manager, for having us here to give you an update on this really exciting project. My name is JC Ward. I'm here today with Emily Olivo, and we're with the City of Fort Collins Neighborhood Services, and we both lead the Mobile Home Park Residents' Rights Team. We've been doing work in this space since about 2019. So I'll let Emily give you a little overview of the project and an update, and then I can talk about some of the benefits that we're seeing in the community.
All right, thank you. So just to summarize, the grant that we were awarded, as Josh mentioned, we were awarded $132,500 from the immediate needs grant, and this went to the installation of backflow preventers in mobile home parks. And so what a backflow preventer does is it ensures that water flows one way into the mobile home park and water cannot flow back out into the main water system. So it's really important to maintaining water quality within a given system, and for overall the entire city or county municipality that it's in. And so this is a state requirement. And what we have found is that when there are major installations like this to occur in mobile home parks, this is often passed, that cost of it is often passed on to residents. And so the purpose behind this grant was to really help bring parks into compliance while making sure that fees are not passed on to residents. We were able to complete this work in May and June of this year, and that we used Top-Notch Plumbing, and they're a small local company that has experience in mobile home parks with working with their infrastructure. They're based out of Greeley, and that was why we were excited to work with them, is because of them being that local company and being a little smaller and getting to support them. So they were able to complete these projects in Nueva Vida Mobile Home Park, which is in the growth management area, as well as Hickory Village, which is within city limits. And so those occurred in May and June of this year. And if you remember back to May and June, it was really rainy. It was our rainiest June that we've ever had, and it was right when they were doing this work. And so there were unanticipated excavation costs as well as electrical work that went with this, and it also took much more time because of as soon as they would start excavating, as you can imagine, water would be filling the trenches that they were creating. And so that was a challenge that they had. Another challenge was aging park infrastructure. Both Hickory Village and Nueva Vida are older parks, and they have some pretty outdated infrastructure. And so that was another big challenge that Top Notch ran into when implementing this. And so the total project cost was $147,880. And so that exceeds the grant that we were awarded by about $15,380. And so we right now are seeking ways to fund this excess $15,000. So with that, I'll turn it to JC.
Thanks, Emily. So some of the benefits that we're already seeing, I can start with those infrastructure pieces. Hickory Village and Nueva Vida were privately owned mobile home parks for a very long time. They also had some of the most deferred maintenance. So the systems for water were not flushed, not maintained, and they haven't had a certified water operator ever before in either of those parks. So for all of the parks in City of Fort Collins and the growth management area, these are two that had some of the worst water infrastructure. So part of the benefit of doing this is that now all those connection points, the water infrastructure leading up to the backflow, some of that did have to be replaced. That did contribute to the cost. So our initial estimates for each one of these projects was about $15,000 to $20,000. And when we actually got in and opened up the ground and looked at what we were working with, it's $65,000 to $70,000, which leads me to the biggest benefit that we're excited about is typically when mobile home park infrastructure upgrades happen or even maintenance work, that cost gets passed along to the residents. Typically, that's not in a one-time assessment. Typically, that is in the form of a lot rent increase. And as we know, those don't go away. They don't say, okay, we've paid for that project and now I'll decrease your lot rent again. It just keeps compounding over time. These are also two of the parks that have some of the highest poverty rates, highest percentage of Latinx residents, and some of the lowest median incomes. In Hickory Village, the median income is about $31,000, and they have almost 80% of folks who are Spanish speaking, maybe not primary, but at least bilingual in Spanish. So we have some folks who have been historically marginalized, who haven't accessed public resources as frequently as other parts of the city or growth management area. And these are the folks who are benefiting the most from this. They may not know it because this is, avoiding passing those costs along to them. We also were able to work with the Fort Collins Utilities, who provides water services, to put in, while the ground was open for excavation, to put in water quality monitoring. So that's another added benefit, kind of secret benefit to the residents. The CDPHE regulations that are requiring these backflow preventers not only require just these backflow preventers, which we know can cost up to $70,000 plus depending on the park. It also requires employment of a certified water operator and specific water quality monitoring schedules. And a lot of the parks do not know that this is happening yet because CDPHE is working with the local water utility providers to do enforcement. And they haven't notified all of the parks yet. They're going through them kind of one by one after their assessment of who's in that worst position. And so that's what we're seeing with our project. And as Emily mentioned, we are here seeking additional funding for that construction excavation overrun.
Can you remind me, this was a partnership with Fort Collins. Was it a 50-50 split? How did that work for funding?
So we did put in a request for City of Fort Collins money matching funds, so $132,000 to do additional parks. There are 9 parks in city limits, another 9 that are in growth management area. When we started putting out the ask to a lot of the property owners and property managers, though, a lot of them do not want to work with the government. And as I mentioned, some of them are not aware that this is coming yet. So there were some folks who turned us down. We tried approaching the people who have the worst water infrastructure right now. So we did get the 2 that were kind of top of our list. So we were excited about that. But the cost plus, they're estimating the cost still at $15,000 to $20,000. So these big corporate owned parks are not as likely to take us up on the offer. So these were the only 2 that we could get to sign up immediately.
Got it. So the city funds remain in a pot available to you for parks inside city limits. Is that what I'm understanding?
It was approved as ARPA eligible, but we initially submitted it through our budgeting for outcomes process last year, and then we pulled that offer from council consideration. There is still some city remaining ARPA funds, especially in the form of underspend, and we do have some city ARPA funds for other mobile home park work. So there is potential, if we get other parks to take this up, especially as enforcement is going on, for us to go back and ask for either ARPA funds or for regular city general funds.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So haven't backflow preventers been required for a long time for CDPHE, or is it just recently? Because I think homeowners have to have that backflow prevention. So, and I feel like having talked to Loveland Utilities, like they had all theirs, like their whole utility mapping area done a while ago. So why have these parks been allowed to kind of not put in these preventions? Because backflow can prevent, serious diseases can come into a system. You can make people sick, or people can even die. It happened at Water World. They had a backflow issue that sickened a bunch of people, and so knowing that, I guess, why has it taken so long? Do we have, and weren't those requirements, wasn't it required quite a while ago?
So for mobile home parks, especially the ones that are within the city limits and growth management area, most of them are very old. Some of the parks are older than I am, and that was when standards were very, very different for what had to be installed for infrastructure. So as new parks come online, so a park like even as old as Harmony Village, which I think is about 10, 15 years old, that one does have a backflow preventer that was required to be installed, but most of these other parks are much older than that, and it wasn't required at the time. So CDPHE started looking at that statewide and saw some of the same things that you're mentioning, where the boil water notices they're seeing a lot more frequently in mobile home parks versus other neighborhood types, and all of that stuff potentially can flow back into the main water system that then requires additional treatment and testing, and potentially could cause some pretty serious health consequences.
And then Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that we learned from CDPHE that really in just the last couple years, a lot of these laws have been on the books, but they haven't actually done the enforcement piece until just the last couple years. So that's what, and as JC mentioned, that they're really relying on individual municipalities and utilities to do that enforcement for the state.
Do both those parks have city water?
Both of them have some services from city water.
Okay. And do we know if there's a lot of other parks? I mean, obviously you said you feel like these are the two worst. Have you evaluated, I mean, are all the parks bad and needing the backflow preventers or are there some, I mean, did you say there were 9 or something that needed to be done and?
So there are a total of 18 in city limits and growth management area that we're sort of working with. Of those, I say we still have a wish list of about 5 parks. Most of them are pretty small. Most of them have been privately owned for a very long time. So we're not talking about kind of those big folks like Sun Communities or like Timber Ridge. Most of those already have that or they have the funding in place. But some of these really small ones, like $70,000 would be a huge blow to their budget. So yes, we do have a wish list.
Are there any grant dollars that like DOLA or CDPHE have made available to kind of address some of these water quality issues? I know that there's been some water legislation at the state level. Did that address any of that or do we know where any of that stands?
Sure, there are some local, state, and federal dollars potentially available, especially for regional water kind of collaboration work, and especially for equity-based work like this. They're very small pots of money, especially compared to the overall cost of each project. So, and a lot of those, especially the DOLA money, that's for the entire state. So we're not a really high priority because our water here is amazing, which is great. So even if the backflow preventers are not installed, we're in better shape than a lot of other municipal governments, unfortunately, or fortunately for us, I guess.
Great. Well, so, yeah, I mean, it's very concerning just because this is a thing that can make people sick, like I said, or worse. And so I'm glad you're on top of it. I'm glad we're taking care of it. I'm glad we take care of 2 parks. Certainly support the additional dollars to be able to, make it whole for the project you did do. But real concerns about how many parks are outstanding and, there's a lot of families that live in these parks. I mean, are we, we obviously don't want people to get sick. And so this is something that I hope we can find a way as communities to prioritize or look into, joint grant funding or something because this is, it's really serious and we know some of the consequences. We've seen them across the nation. It's not good and it's not right. So thanks for your work.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, folks. Is this, my understanding is that there are perhaps 54 mobile home parks in the unincorporated parts of the county, representing maybe 5,000 housing units. Is this a problem in the unincorporated parts of the county? And if so, what are the options for addressing it? And it's great that Fort Collins is doing this and you all are doing great work. But there are other municipalities in the county like Loveland. Is it an issue there as well? And what are those communities doing?
Thank you for the question. It is definitely a problem, especially in some of the parks that are in unincorporated parts of the county or in other cities where we have older parks. So Loveland does have several that are also, they have aging infrastructure, privately owned, so we would expect that infrastructure to be in rough shape.
Is it an issue at Lago Vista?
Yes. And I'm not sure if they have their backflow preventer installed yet or not. So I can double check on that.
So how do we address the larger, what are the options for addressing what appears to be a larger problem?
There are some regional coordination efforts that are underway. City of Fort Collins is definitely willing because we've been in this space a little bit longer than some of the other groups. We're happy to help, happy to supply contracting, any of our vendors that we've worked with, any of that kind of information to help support that. And also to look for some grant opportunities that would help beyond just city limits and growth management area.
And if I may, final question, and thank you, and yeah, I support the extra money and all that. That direction. But what is the role of our Larimer County Department of Health and Environment in this endeavor?
That's a great question. So the enforcement right now is mostly through the water utility providers. So it's not going through a lot of the municipal governments. We've sort of inserted ourselves because we have a municipal utility, and I would bounce that over, I think, to our friends at the county.
So if I'm understanding, the enforcement comes out of CDPHE. Is that correct?
CDPHE, they are responsible for enforcement, but haven't done that for quite some time. So now they're asking the local municipal government and local, utility water providers to do that enforcement on their behalf.
Got it. So I think it's similar to some of the, oil and gas enforcement types of things where at the local level, we've not been granted the authority to participate in that. Because it is CDPHE's responsibility, and it sounds like it's going through the utility providers rather than connection to our public health and environment department. However, I do think making sure that there's a connection, I don't know if your groups have talked to anybody at environmental health for the county. It might be good to make that connection. So I will get your information from Josh, and I will probably connect you with Chris Manley, our environmental health director, just so that he's aware of the issue and can help us at the county level for those unincorporated areas, maybe come up with a workable plan for the future.
And if I may, I seem to recall that state law did allow for the local public health departments to do enforcement when there were concerns about water quality issues. It may still be because I think in the past when issues have come up in Loveland, I think we've reached out, and I think our public health director has said they do have some authority to enforce, but it very likely is a resource issue, a capacity issue. I'm not sure if that's happening, but it would be nice to find out exactly what the authority is and what the responsibilities are and the potential for collaboration and addressing how we might address the larger issue perhaps.
Laura, I'm wondering if this might be something for the Board of Health to discuss, maybe at a upcoming meeting.
For the what?
The Board of Health. Through the environmental health.
Let's touch base after, and I know that there'll be a planning meeting to discuss the next agenda. Maybe this could be a topic for that, if you guys can help me with that.
Sure, I think as a preliminary step, having Chris connect and understand the issue,
Okay.
to then be able to take any kind of policy decision or question to the Board of Health. Yeah, but we'll get started on that.
Of course, Laura, thanks. Thank you, guys.
So I have a quick question, and thank you all for your work. Really important for that work for those residents who may not understand, what they're at risk and kind of, what the options are. So I'm really grateful for you both and your work. Josh, I have no problem with, meeting the extra needs that they need, but I'm just curious, the other project is the one that maybe we couldn't get a hold of, and there was some immediate needs grants. Did that just go back in the pot, or is that something that would be about the same amount as this, that it could just be absorbed with that, or is it something we need to go back into we have that been holding, kind of holding for the things on the horizon, so.
Yeah, it was about $12,000, and after the first few months when we didn't hear from them, we kind of dropped that one off. So that's
Okay.
that's already been kind of unallocated, thrown back in the pot.
Okay. Okay, so it sounds to me like we have consensus that we support this request, and so, but thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Right, so moving on to the regular financial update. This chart hasn't changed a whole lot. There's still a total of about $72.1 million in resources from ARPA that the county has at its disposal. Still about $53.2 million of that will be lost revenue. $8.3 million will be directly reimbursed by the SLFRF. $7.8 million has already been reimbursed by the SLFRF, but is considered recyclable because it was payroll costs. Finally, there's $1.3 million of Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund, much more difficult than Laura's title, that remains available. We were worried that that could have been reduced as part of the debt ceiling negotiations, but we've been told that that source of funding was not touched. We have received the first tranche of that, so we're expecting the second half, or $650,000, sometime this year. And also $1.5 million in interest that has been generated by the SLFRF is available, with all future interest going into the general fund. So as of, looks like July 13th, this was updated. Of that $72.1 million, $16.3 million has been spent. $6 million is available, has not yet been allocated to any project, and $49.8 million has been allocated but not spent. The expenditures are starting to increase, which is a good thing. We have a new top line on the projects, which is broadband. Just over $3.3 million has now been expended on those broadband partnerships, with certainly more to come. On transformative projects, there's just under $3.1 million has been expended. $2.8 million of immediate needs grants have been expended. And then the next few items have been on here for a while. Community justice, alternatives, payroll, public safety, supplemental and retention pay, community justice, alternatives, revenue deficit, and finally the Park Lane mobile home contribution. Jail inmate care continues to be a monthly expense of, I believe it's about $30,000. That has now reached about $444,000. All others are about just under $900,000 for the total of $16.3 million.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. So this 16.3 million, the previous pie graph slide, if you could go back, I still can't, is that what's in the red?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So these final charts are just kind of by allocation. Of the direct allocation, $8.3 million, just over $7.7 million has been spent. The immediate needs grants and some, there's also about $300,000 for the district attorney's complex case prosecution position, and the, I'm blanking on the term, but it's co-responder vicarious trauma, which is only in the tens of thousands of dollars, remains to be expended from this bucket. For recyclable funds, this is the biggest bucket of available funding, about $5.5 million. $2 million has been spent. That's the Park Lane, I guess now Nueva Vida, mobile home park contribution, and the revenue deficit in community corrections. That $300,000 is for the data dashboard that probably is either has been spent since then or is close to being completed. Lost revenue of about $53.3 million. And my apologies, this slide was not updated. That 0.5 blue slide is actually the Red Feather Lakes public restroom from the last presentation, so that should be yellow. So about 46.5 has been allocated but not spent, and about 6.7 has been spent. So the lost revenue amount has been pretty much all allocated. Of
Can I
course.
pause you before we go too much further, unless my colleagues have a question? Can you go back a couple to the, one more? Was that the direct, this is where the DA's complex case.
Correct.
This is a pro of our Larimer County 101 classes, and because the district attorney, presented about that complex case, and then I had several of our recent graduates from Larimer County 101 reach out and advocate to me to keep that position there and funding. So that was a multi-year grant, correct?
Correct.
And they're still looking to figure out how they absorb that, or are they going to? I mean, is that?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know if that?
So-
I'm just curious about that, or, I mean, only because now I have several, and rightly so, residents who are very passionate about this position now, so.
Yeah, the initial, the funding was allocated basically for 3 years, $150,000 for each year, including last year, this year, and next year. Of course, there was a lag in actually filling the position, and so I think that funding will probably go into 2025. And so we would have to look as we put the 2025 budget together to transition that to general fund would be the other alternative.
Okay, thank you. I see Lorenda was,
I was going to say the very
Motion.
same thing. I suspect that they'll request that. But they may also, they're very good at seeking grants. They may find another funding source for it. They would get it a little further. I don't think any of those would be permanent. So ultimately, I do think they'd be looking to general fund.
Okay, thank you.
So finally, the 1.5 million in fund interest that has been allocated to the Fleet campus, and that has not yet been spent. And the same with the Local Assistance and Tribal Consistency Fund of $1.3 million. That has also been allocated to the Fleet campus. Any other questions on the financial update?
Just curious, remind me, we were very fortunate to get that extra local assistance, tribal consistency fund, and thank you to our friends at CCI that really advocated for that. Does that have the same kind of spending deadlines, or is it similar, or is it a whole nother set of complex guidelines and requirements?
It's actually very easy. There is no deadline to spend the funds. It can be spent on pretty much anything, with a few exceptions that we would never spend it on anyway. And so we basically just have to fill reports out for that until we spend it all, and then we're done with it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yeah, sometime it might be helpful to have the pie graphs all in one slide, but so there's 5-point-something million unallocated in recyclable funds, isn't that right, Josh? And that,
Right.
Sorry, yeah. And then that's different from
I
the
see.
6 million unallocated in either some other category of funds. Does that mean if you add those two together, we have 11.5 million to use for different purposes and different timelines?
No, I'm sorry. This 5.5 million is within the 6 million that's available.
What makes up the balance of the 6 million?
And it looks like
bits from the other funds?
perhaps one of these charts, it's probably lost revenue is still available of $500,000. I'm sorry, one of these charts is not correct, but there is $6 million total that's available. Whether that's all in recyclable or 5.5 recyclable and another source. If it is another source, it would be lost revenue and is flexible funding with no time limit.
I think that helps. Thank you.
Josh, can you go back to slide 12 for a second, the pie chart? So this one is really the important chart that Josh is showing now. This is all of the money put into one giant pie chart. And then what he does is he shows you for each of the various funding streams, how much of each of those have we used. So those are interesting if you're interested in knowing, based on the source of funds, is it interest? Is it the tribal funds? Is it SLFRF? What is the source of those funds? But this is really the one, just to simplify the question, that we're working from.
And there are probably easier ways to portray this. So as those funds get allocated and spent, I'll seek to maybe provide different graphs that make it a little easier.
Yeah. And if it's not, another thought to that, Josh, is maybe there can be a footnote somewhere to remind us the different categories of funds and what they're, I think, those funds there. I mean, there's a category where there's no, the lost revenue funds, right?
Correct.
Those funds, we don't have a timeline by which we need to use those funds, correct?
Correct.
It might be helpful maybe for me to, little footnotes here and there, but just to remind us what each fund is or what the timelines are. Thank you.
Can do.
That's all.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. Always looking for ways to improve these too, so thank you. So this is the final slide. Our next ARPA work session is scheduled for October 18th. Just a quick note, there was no audit finding on our 2022 SLFRF expenses, which is always good news. The second quarter project and expenditure report is actually due by the end of this month to the U.S. Treasury Department. I envision that should be a fairly short report because really the only expenses were immediate needs grants, the DA, the jail medical and the vicarious trauma training. So it should be a relatively small report. Also, our immediate needs grants recipients are going to be visiting us at Administrative Matters, which we got our first one yesterday. If you remember, we had talked about perhaps having some kind of open house or celebration, and we worked on that, but realized that schedules are fairly forbidding for the summer, and we just couldn't quite pin down a great time to do it when there was great availability. And so what we are going to do instead is bring those recipients to Administrative Matters to talk about the great work that they've done and to provide presentations on that. We are putting all of their reports and anything that they bring with us to those Administrative Matters meetings on the website, which is at larimer.gov/budget/immediate needs grants reports. And we are putting those up as spotlight articles on the county website as well. So hopefully, perhaps we can bring back the folks from the city to talk about the great work that they do with those backflow preventers. So that is the conclusion of the presentation.
Thank you, Josh. Just well done, and yeah, it was a cool idea to bring them all together. Maybe they all like to share and talk, but I really enjoyed how it worked out on Tuesday and getting to showcase and see the details and getting a chance to maybe spotlight them and celebrate them and the work they do. So well done on that, and I certainly enjoyed it. It certainly was a nice flow and kind of seems like they were all put it together with this retro look back to 1982. And I think that's a song with Taylor Swift or something. I don't know, but it was very exciting to have that. Well done, and I appreciate you bringing this here and having them share with that. And also DNR, because I was curious about that the other day, how those were all progressing. So really important projects. I think we take for granted sometimes that wastewater and water systems on our DNR properties, but they're so critical for our visitor experience. So I think this is great. Certainly we're having conversations, but I feel we have had so many conversations that reach out to the public in these transformational projects. And again, I want to thank you and Laura for the immediate need grants and the amazing work you did with that. And we haven't had a chance to circle back with that. It seems really impactful work, so thank you. Commissioner Kafalis, did you have any comments or things you'd like to say, sir?
Just to say thank you, and I'm continually impressed. I don't want it to go to your head, but I'm continually impressed by the breadth and depth of your knowledge, and you're always getting better at how you share that breadth and depth of knowledge on very complex matters. And so thank you. And I thought your presentation at the end of the Community Leaders Summit was also spot on. I think that helped a lot of people understand a little bit better about the proposed ballot measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Lauren, did you have anything else you wanted to say other than you've seen this? So Josh, if something comes up, though, you'll bring it to us if there's another update we need to know and things like that, and I'm sure Laura will as well. And
Definitely.
okay.
Yep.
Well done. Thank you so much. And I wanted to also just say, I know this is above and beyond duties assigned because this reporting and everything is an extra thing, but kudos to the no finding for the audit and stuff, because and it sounds like we were one of the few entities, local government entities, that got all that turned in on time. Because of other complexities. So I have to say that's exemplary, and thank you very much for that as well. But great work, and at 2:50 we will be adjourned. Thank you.